everyone. My name is Brian Baker, and I'm so glad you're joining us for the Your Life Matters series. The reason I've written this book and the reason I'm taking all the time to produce this video series is because I really care about your life. And I know that most people on this planet, myself included, we tend to waste our lives for a lot of the time. And so today I'm going to tell you 3 stories that I think will just start us off on the right foot as we begin this inquiry into life's fundamental questions. The first story comes from one of my favorite novels of all time, For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. This book is set in the Spanish Civil War. I'm a former Army guy, so I love novels about war and just the heroics that those situations bring out and those situations that were put in. But anyway, this is the Spanish Civil War, and it's a conflict that really happened in the 1930s between the communists in Spain and the fascists. So Hemingway's writing this story, and it's fiction, but at the same time, he went to Spain and he lived this and observed it. So he's writing about the circumstances he saw there. So anyway, the book is about blowing this bridge, okay? Robert Jordan is an American, paramilitary guy, special forces type guy. He's fighting in Spain, and he's been tasked to go behind enemy lines and blow this bridge so that this communist invasion can happen, so this offensive can get through the mountains. And so a bunch of just craziness happens. He's behind enemy lines, and he finds himself in need of horses the night before this event is supposed to take place. So he sends out one of these communist guerrillas. His name is El Sordo, which is a nom de guerre. He sends out El Sordo to go out with his band of communist guerrillas and steal horses from the fascists at night. It goes horribly wrong. Shooting starts right away, and then snow begins to fall. And it's kind of this tragic moment of the book because everyone knows that this snow falling is going to result in El Sordo and his men dying because they're stealing horses, and their horses are going to leave footprints in the snow. So middle of the night, El Sordo and his men, they steal these horses, snow's falling, machine gun bullets are ripping through the air, echoing off the walls of the mountains, and then they're pursued by more and more fascist troops on horseback. They're pursued over glimmering slopes and spurs, the mountainsides now covered in snow, and the hot steel of bullets slicing through the mountain air, and one by one, El Sordo's men start to get cut down, until finally, just in a moment of desperation, they retreat up this hill. It's a tiny hill. There's 5 of them left, and each one is looking down at different, actually laying behind their dead horses, looking down the hill, waiting for the fascists to come. And in this moment, one of the young men on that hill is an 18-year-old boy named Joaquin. And Joaquin tries to rally his comrades in this last moment of their lives. And he starts rattling off these slogans of the Communist Party. And the other men on the hill want nothing to do with it. And long story short, I'm not going to explain the whole thing here. You can go ahead and read about it in the book or pick up For Whom the Bell Tolls. But the men, his comrades on top of this hill, they give Joaquin pretty clear proof that the communist leadership that's sending peasants like him to die, they're actually hypocrites. They're sending their own sons to school in Russia. Everything he's believed in, this great cause, this cause that he poured his life into, is actually a farce. Okay? I tell that story because so many of us in America today want to pour our lives into causes. And I've been there. I've poured my life into causes, political causes. And I'm not picking on the left or the right here. I'm picking on the left and the right here. But we're looking for meaning and purpose in our lives. We pour our lives into causes, but if we achieve those causes, they don't really leave us fulfilled. And a lot of times we end up realizing that those causes really weren't worth our time of our lives, and we end up disillusioned. The second story I wanted to tell you comes from one of Plato's famous dialogues. It's called the Euthyphro. And so in this dialogue, Socrates is climbing the Acropolis in Athens. He's on his way to the King Archon's court, and he comes across his friend Euthyphro. And these men meet right outside the court, and they start, asking each other, hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Socrates is there facing the charge of being impious and of corrupting the youth of Athens. And Euthyphro is there bringing charges against his father for murder. And Socrates goes, whoa, Euthyphro, you're bringing charges against your own father for murder? Like, tell me the story. What's going on? So Euthyphro relates the story. And here's what happened. Euthyphro and his father, they had a servant who killed a slave in a drunken rage. Okay, so this servant was a murderer of a slave. Euthyphro's father takes this servant who had murdered, binds him, ties him up, and puts him in a ditch. Okay, not the best choice. And then he sends off word to the priests, hey, what should I do with this servant that killed a slave? Well, while he's waiting for orders, this servant dies, okay, of exposure. And Euthyphro comes to Athens to bring murder charges against his father. Socrates is like, whoa, Euthyphro, like, why would you do this? Yeah, your father might be responsible for this death. I'm not sure that's murder, given the extenuating circumstances that the servant had killed someone. Why are you here? And Euthyphro says, well, piety for the gods requires that I bring this charge of murder against my father. So Socrates says, hey, Euthyphro, I'm being charged with impiety. Maybe you have something to teach me. What is piety, Euthyphro? You must be an expert. Euthyphro says, well, yes, I am an expert in what piety is. And so Euthyphro says, piety is whatever is loved by the gods. And Socrates says, Euthyphro, I have a serious problem with that definition. I've read a lot of Greek literature, and those texts show that the Greek gods are constantly quarreling and fighting with each other. So how could piety be what is beloved by the gods when the gods don't even agree on what they love? So Euthyphro starts to backtrack. He tries to come up with a few more definitions, but he can't do it. Yet, he continues on to charge his father with murder in order to be pious, but he has no idea what piety is. And I think a lot of us live our lives this way. We get really passionate about how we should live, but we really haven't even defined the essential terms of life to understand if what we're doing is the best course of life. The third story I want to tell you, I think every single American is guilty of what you'll find in this story, myself included. This is the trap of the American dream. This story comes from real life. Henry David Thoreau is one of my absolute favorite authors. Any of my students will tell you that. I'm always talking about Thoreau. So in the 1840s, Thoreau lived in Concord, Massachusetts, and he just didn't like what he saw going on in America at the time. He was very critical of slavery in the South. He was very critical of the Mexican-American War, which was, as Ulysses S. Grant said, one of the most unjust wars ever waged in history. So he's upset about these things. He's upset about what Americans are living for. So he goes to the woods, like we've gone to the woods here, to suck the marrow out of life, he says. Thoreau says, I went to the woods to live deliberately, to suck the marrow out of life. Right? He wants to go to the woods to answer life's essential questions, just like we are. So while he's there, he writes one of my favorite books of all time, Walden. And a lot of what he's writing about in this book is how Americans are dominated by materialism. We're working ourselves to death. Thoreau will say people are plowing themselves into the soil for compost. We're laying up treasures on earth instead of laying up treasures in heaven. And why are we doing this? We're doing this to keep up with the Joneses. We want to have a nicer house, a nicer car, a nicer carriage for Thoreau's day than our neighbors. We want the latest clothes from Paris. But Thoreau asks, is that really what life is about? Thoreau puts it this way. He says, but men labor under a mistake. The better part of man is soon plowed into the soil for compost. By a seeming fate, commonly called necessity, they are employed, as it says in an old book, laying up treasures which moth and rust will corrupt, and thieves break through and steal. It is a fool's life, as they will find when they get to the end of it, if not before. Friends, I've written this book and I'm making this series so that we won't live the fool's life, so that we won't be on our deathbeds, hopefully, in our 90s or over 100, so that we won't be on our deathbeds questioning how we lived our lives. Thoreau said, the cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life, which is required to be exchanged for it, immediately or in the long run. What are you giving your life to right now? Friends, we're all craving meaning and purpose in our lives. We want our lives to matter. What many of us do to feel that sense of purpose and meaning is we pour our lives into work. But I know from experience, and you probably do too, that no matter how hard you work for that promotion at work, once you finally get it, you feel good for a while, but you don't feel fulfilled. Or how many ever causes you pursue, how many ever things you fight for, how much ever pleasure you experience, it's never going to leave us that lasting soul peace that we crave. So what about you? Are you chasing the American dream endlessly? Are you pouring your life out to get things? Are you pursuing justice without knowing what justice even is? If you're unsure, I recommend you pick up the book. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get it on Medium for free. Pick up the book, follow along with this series. I would maintain that deep down, every human being has 4 questions they need to answer. Origin, where do we come from? Where do we come from? Are we an accident of time and chance? Is it just biological determinism? Or were we created? Meaning, which I've already hit on, but why are we here? Does my life matter? Wholeness. How can I feel peace, soul peace, which I would call shalom, amidst suffering? And hope. Will things ultimately get better? What happens when I die? Friends, my goal is to help you answer these questions. Just to tell you where I'm going with this whole thing, I firmly believe that these questions are best answered through the Christian faith. I also firmly believe that the Christian faith can be logically defended, that there are excellent reasons to be a Christian, to believe in Scripture, and to believe in what Christ did for us. So, the first part of this book and the first part of this video series is going to be me trying to prove to you that God exists and that what Jesus did actually happened. And again, I think that I can defend those things logically. So I invite you to join us. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.